Well, there's no other means for installing this gate if we don't grant the variance. So, in that sense, there is no alternative except to abandon the project.
So, okay.
Go ahead, Tom.
Can or cannot be achieved by other feasible means on the gate.
Well, it could be achieved, technically it could be achieved, but I think the applicant makes a convincing case that you would destroy the aesthetic value of what they have by doing that.
Like by cutting off the bottom.
Yeah. You technically could do it, but you could have it, it would compromise the fabric of the original gates
Okay.
to such an extent it wouldn't be feasible for the applicant. I think that you could make it a convincing case, if that's true.
So I think, in essence, it probably could not be achieved by other means, only because it's such a unique piece of, as a gate, and it's, historic value and whatnot, that it's either installed or not installed, and installed as it is. Or, like Eric said, they would abandon the project.
Okay. Grace?
I guess I have a little bit of so we're also approaching this as we're using this specific gate, but in theory, like, having a 4-foot gate there is also a possibility, right? Like, it's not specific to this particular piece. And I think we all agree the historic value of this and having that they were original to the site, or we think they were original to the site, and we think it's appropriate for the character of the neighborhood. But technically, a 4-foot fence would be just as fine as a 6-foot fence in that location.
I agree with Grace on the point that as one of the benefits being privacy, that actually you might get more privacy with a different gate because you can see right through this one, but you certainly cannot get the benefit of the historic value of the gate in any other way. So I'm mixed, but only slightly mixed on the privacy question. Okay. The proposed variance will or will not produce an undesirable change in the neighborhood. I'll start on that and say it will not produce an undesirable change. In fact, it will produce a desirable change.
Agreed.
Do you see this historic part of the building, whether it's original or just really old, to see that restored, I think, is a benefit to the neighborhood and its character.
I agree as well.
So do I.
John, you said you agree.
Yep.
Donald? Any additional comments on that?
I agree. I'm just,
I guess
I
there's,
just rolled forward and I went through about 3 different hearings where we have somebody come in and they make, you've got a gate that it's new, but they make it look historical, and how do you, when we get into this kind of language, it's a little bit, I think Grace was saying, you were saying, when we start to try to define what is historical and what isn't, it gets tough. And I don't think we have to go, I don't know that we have to use that, get into that kind of language to deal with this this variance, so I guess what I'm saying is, that's why I'm hesitating. I don't
Yeah.
disagree that it's not, you know, will be a benefit to the neighborhood, but,
Well, if it sets a precedent that somehow is turned into 6-foot gates at the end of every driveway, then it's definitely an undesirable change, but I think that we can prevent that, by considering the long driveway and the,
that's why I think these other reasons are better.
This factor is just about whether it's undesirable, right? We're not asked to judge whether it'll be desirable, just will it harm?
Yeah,
That's the
there you
only
go.
question we can answer
Yeah.
without, we don't have to get into whether it's good, we just.
Right, yeah,
Right.
that's kind of where, that's what I'm thinking.
so I guess the potential harm is if we mess up and set a bad precedent.
Oh, I would think other harms would be loss of neighborliness due to a higher than normal fence, loss of airflow, and a loss of sightlines, and I think in all those, it's little or to no harm from this particular project because of its unique characteristics.
What Eric said.
Okay.
Also, not that, I don't think that's what you're saying, how it doesn't necessarily matter, but, I mean, it takes a lot of work, as you guys know, you guys do a lot of work to try to get these things approved, just because I did contact several people from historical societies to try to verify that they were from the 1850s, so I mean, if you were to put that into the requirements, that you can't just put a brand new gate that looks like it's from the 1850s, that it needs to be verified by a third party that it actually most likely was built in that era. Like I said, I mean, if more people put more historically accurate things on their property instead of showing fences, that wouldn't be a bad thing.
Well, he going to my point number 3, convincing evidence gate, the applicant gave us convincing evidence the gate is original to the house and its architecture. I think that's not saying, I think that's a
Yeah, that's an
objective
fact.
statement.
Yeah.
Okay, number 3, variances are or are not substantial in some aspects. John, put you on the spot there.
I don't think it's substantial, because it's 4 foot. I mean, you would be asking for what would be in essence a 2-foot variance, but half of that variance, spacing is really, the fence itself is mostly, or the gate itself is only 5'2", the predominant portion of it. It's not wide, it's very see-through, its architecture is, you know, quite pleasing as far as, you know, skill put into the wrought iron, and it's 50 feet from the road, from the front of the property setback,
Okay,
and that's about it.
Grace?
I agree, it's very minimal impact. It's a short length of fence, it's set back all the way from the street, so it's minimally visible from the sidewalk, and there are no adjoining properties up against it.
Okay. Eric?
I agree, not substantial.
Donald?
Not substantial. 50-foot setback, transparency of the gate.
I agree also.
Not a corner lot.
The proposed variance will or will not have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district.
Will not. For many of the same reasons we just discussed, and I don't see it affecting any kind of environmental.
Okay, Grace?
I agree.
I agree.
Agreed.
Everybody agrees. And number 5, the alleged difficulty necessitating the variance was or was not self-created.
Self-created. They don't necessarily have to put it up. I mean, I think they're primarily putting it up for aesthetic, if not, partial privacy, but it just doesn't offer as much as an optical privacy, obstruction from viewers from the street. It's always set back.
Grace?
It's definitely self-creating, but it's a minimal impact.
Eric?
Yes, self-created.
Donald?
Yeah, there's no deleterious effect in the neighborhood, to the environment.
Oh, this is about being self-created?
Oh, self-created? Oh. Self-created, but we don't have to, we can, it's like Grace is pointing out, you could technically put a 4-foot high gate
Right.
there. We don't have to find in the positive on all 5
That's
to
true.
ultimately balance out one way or the other.
Okay, so, in balance, let me just sum up kind of what we've said on the gate. We've seen convincing evidence that the gate is original and appropriate. We did not hear from any neighbors. We found that the gate is visually pleasing. It's basically see-through. It's 50 feet back from the street. It's a set of conditions that's going to be hard to match. And it appears that this is the gate that has been on the house at some point in the distant past, not since the code was adopted. Minimal impact visually, physically.
And narrow in width.
Yep,
Relative.
narrow. The short variance, only 2 feet from the 4-foot height maximum. It doesn't run along another property, it hits it at a right angle. Any other thoughts on balancing for the gate? Do we want to vote on these separately?
We should. I think they're really there might be one application, but they're 2 separate issues.
Does that mean we need to write 2 resolutions, do you think? I guess if the votes differ, then maybe we do.
We could do it under one resolution and grant it 2 variances under the one resolution.
Or we could take a straw vote, and then if it looks like they're gonna differ, then we could write 2. Is that crazy, Donald? You think? Donald was the ZBA chair for a dozen years in the past. So he's the resident expert.
Yeah.
20 years?
The work is never quite ever over, right?
To be bulletproof, you would do 2 separate decisions.
Might as well.
Okay?
Not to confuse it.
But,
Okay.
And then you're just, but I think we're doing that. I think we're doing the balancing test for each different, it's more work for you, I understand that.
Sure.
But
Okay, well, I'm gonna take my notes on the same boilerplate that I'm working on here, and then I'll split them out later, so.
Should we take a vote on this?
Yeah, can I have a motion to either approve or deny the variance for the gate/fence?
Well, I move to approve it, I vote to approve it, on conditions that the fence, the variance runs with this particular gate. That it's granted purely for this gate and no other substitute gate.
Okay, and I would add to that, because this appears to be the original or
Agreed.
historic gate.
Agreed.
I second the motion and ask whether we would want to add any conditions regarding the supporting post that has yet to be constructed.
Yeah, something along the line that the post that is constructed has the same limited conditions, you know, as has the same conditions as the gate itself.
Well, height, we wanna be, like, give a specification of height.
Oh, as to how high the post
Yeah.
can actually be
How
at this
high it
point?
could be, or dimensions in general.
Post can't be any higher than the
Then
highest portion of the
The
gate.
fence of the gate, yeah.
Yeah, and then I don't know if it's on us to determine what the post looks like, that's more of a historic
Yeah.
board, but I agree we can set the height for it. Is the height of the gate enough of a post to do what it needs to do?
I don't think we'd want the post to be higher than the
Okay.
gate height
Right.
aesthetically, I think that would look terrible, so that's perfectly acceptable.
Well, look, let's say that they, for whatever reason, they're never gonna do it, but let's say they poured a round concrete column the size of that, okay? We wouldn't be happy with that, right? So, in a way, we could say that we're assuming that the supporting post is going to be substantially less than the size of the area of the footing that has been installed. And we
Definitely.
assume it's gonna be something like 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches square steel tube to an appropriate height, no higher than the highest portion of the gate. And it would be centered on the existing, footing.
Correct, and then the footing is gonna be covered with gravel, so it's just a very large footing.
Is there a hinge at the top of this though?
Is there one?
Is there a hinge at the top of this? I can't figure out what's going on here. The top. It looks like it's on the
Of
wall
the
side it's
gates?
going into the building, but on the other side it looks like it wants to go into another thing, which means you'll need height above that. Do you have images of that?
Where's the hinge?
Just looking at this portion of it, it looks like this is gonna turn into the building or something along those lines, which means it's gonna look weird. Or if it needs to hinge onto something on the pole, on the post.
So so we obviously, because we just found the gates, we haven't gotten anybody to tell us how we should do it, but we could make sure that whoever does the custom wrought iron holes conform to what your standards are in terms of the height and everything, and if they have to cut off or figure out how to make them hinge into that properly, that I don't think is wouldn't bother me in terms of if we had to like cut little things off the side to make them actually mount, but I definitely would not wanna cut the gates shorter. So, yeah, I have no idea until we actually ask someone to make them for us, but we would, obviously our interest is in making things look as authentic as possible.
They're probably gonna
so.
put like a piece on with a pin coming down,
Mm-hmm.
and then a washer plate off their new post, and it would simply just
Just drop in.
drop
The
in,
top is
and
just
then on the
aesthetic.
building side, you'd probably do the same thing welded to some kind of plate, larger plate
Mhm.
that would be attached to the building.
But you said there's already
Yeah, there's.
a hanger on the building, right?
Is there already a hanger on the building?
Not there, it's on the
It's towards the front, right?
Yeah, but it's an indication of what the method that was used, so it's
Yeah.
similar.
All right,
So you think that may have been on the front at one point?
I don't know, I don't know if there's a missing third gate that we don't have. It's weird because, yeah, if you look at the pictures, there's the little wrought iron hook that comes out, and then over here, there's like a wrought iron flat with a divot out of it, so that must be where it latched.
So this may not be the original location for the gate then, no else.
right.
Well, it's actually probably better if it's set back.
I think that, oh, wait a minute, you've got another, I've just seen it, you have another, footing there.
Yeah, we poured the footing.
Oh, I see, you've got two footings, so you're, oh, I
We-
see,
we
you're not
put-
gonna attach this to the building, you're gonna put another, post up here.
Yeah, we put the footings
Okay.
in before we even planned, like we had the footings in when we first bought the house a year and a half ago, we were gonna, we did the backyard, and we did the front yard, so the footings don't have to determine how we put the gate on, obviously, like they're there, but we would do whatever you recommend, and obviously, we haven't consulted with anyone yet to say, how is the best way to put this on that's going to look good with the gates and not gonna look horrible.
I was just thinking we would add a little bit of variance to it, like height of the gate plus 3 inches or 6, just so there's a little bit of wiggle room in how that's getting mounted, because we're making accommodations for this particular gate. It would be,
I mean, it would have to obviously just swing open and be slightly off the ground, it
Right.
couldn't be right on the ground, so yeah, it would need a little bit
it
of
needs a little
clearance.
buffer.
Yeah.
So we could just say the minimum height necessary to mount the gate.
Right, agreed.
And then if there's, cherubs on top of the post.
I'm also perfectly happy for you guys to put a contingency that we send you photos to approve before of the
No,
actual.
we wanna be done
We
tonight.
wanna be,
That's why we're going through kind of
All
a
right.
ridiculous discussion,
yeah,
because we
yeah.
wanna be done with
Right,
it.
I know.
And so, we don't wanna have you coming back,
Or
we
put
don't
that on
wanna,
the
you
heritage
know.
board or something, but we definitely wanna make it look, great.
So I'm gonna say the condition is that posts are limited to the minimum height necessary to mount the gate.
Correct, and
You're building this because you wanna make a monument to your gates, not your posts.
Right. Exactly, yes, it would be a shame to make the post more.
but Aaron, also, I would think that, because now, I mean, there's 2 posts involved. I mean, I didn't see the other one,
Yeah, I didn't.
it was the link to the building, so, the existence of those posts are pretty much conditioned on, their use just to support this gate. So
Yeah.
so no other gate is
Well,
substituted.
No other 6-foot gate. If they decide they don't like this gate next year.
What if they
could
take it
put out
down
a
and just
4-foot.
leave and somebody just leaves the posts up?
I don't think we can say anything. They could have the posts there right now without anything from any variance.
But yeah, 2 posts isn't a gate. But we would never do that.
Yeah,
I'll make you a
'cause they're-
promise, if we move and take the gates, we'll take the posts.
Yeah, but it might not be you, it's the next owner.
No,
True, true.
I don't think that's necessary, because we're saying the gate can only be in that location, and it's only that gate.
But it's really part of the gate. It's all part of the gate.
So
I think it should all be considered part of the gate, that if the gate is removed, the posts get removed with it.
okay, oh, I'm sorry, I was thinking of the footings, not the posts, I take that back.
Yeah, not the
Okay.
footings.
I'm okay with that limitation, that if the gate is removed,
Because if you just leave the posts there, it'll be an invite for somebody else to throw another gate on it, of a different type.
I mean, the only question I have is who the heck's gonna be around to enforce that? But
you
if you're
know,
around and.
Jeff's
It
gonna
doesn't ma-
digitize this
you know,
all,
as-
somebody's gonna find it on the
As
internet.
long as it's in the, it can be
Alright.
enforced by the village, as long as it's in the language, and the building inspector.
I think the chain link fences aren't coming down, I don't know if those things are gonna come down.
Consider, okay, so I'm gonna add the condition that the posts are considered part of the gate and may not stand alone.
Yeah.
Okay, any other balancing statements on or conditions on the gate? All right, so did we have a motion for a vote?
I move to approve
I
the
think we
gate
already-
variance of 2 feet, I think, are we doing this precisely? Is it 2 feet, the variance? Height variance?
Well, we don't know how high it's exactly gonna be, so I think we're limiting it to the minimum height necessary to mount this gate,
For these gates?
this specific gate.
Okay, well, I move to approve it pursuant to the balancing statement you made, you just typed up, so.
Okay,
Anybody second?
A second.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Shed.
gate done, shed next. Okay. Benefits sought by the applicants can or cannot be achieved by other physical means, I keep saying physical, feasible means.
I say they can be because the shed could be moved forward.
Agreed.
Off the back property lines, to make it specific. Outs. At least, even though there are trees in the way, you know, potentially the trees could be moved or taken down.
I agree with that, but I would add a minor qualifier that preserving it's it's a long lot, but it's narrow, and preserving the open lawn, is aided by having the gate at the back,
Having the shed at the back.
the shed at the back, sorry. Eric?
I agree with, what John said.
Donald?
I agree with what Eric said.
Cascading agreements here.
Domino.
Maybe some logic, I'll just say agree with John. Okay, that's everybody. Proposed variance will or will not produce an undesirable change in the neighborhood. Eric, you wanna go first?
Well, that's an interesting one. Again, as I mentioned in regard to the gate, I like to look at what the intent of this rule was or is about having a 10-foot setback. Am I right that it is to prevent property owners from building structures that encroach on neighbors' space and create a crowded,
Yes.
boxed-in feel? And if that's the case, that concern doesn't apply here because of the unique nature of the retaining wall and the street. So therefore, there is no, in fact, not only is there not a harm to the neighborhood, but you could argue there's a benefit to anyone passing along Academy Street. It's better to see a large open yard with trees than it is to see a yard with a shed moved out into the middle of it and trees cut down.
Donald?
He took the words right out of my mouth. I wrote down, the spirit of the code to create spatial buffers from a neighbor is not advanced by not granting this variance.
I agree with that. I think it might be different if the shed were right at street level, because
That
then
would be completely different.
then you would have a wall there. So I think that what you two are saying has to be seen in the context of the shed being 10 feet below the street.
I agree with what everybody said, including what you just said, Aaron, with regards to the shed being below the level. You know, whether it's a neighbor, a private property owner, or in this case, public street sidewalk, they have just as much of an interest, the public would, to seeing a shed not built, you know, square up against a property line. But the other thing we have here is we have two sizable structures on either side neighboring. But if you would read specifically the question again for me.
Proposed variance will or will not produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood.
I don't think it would, because when you look at the neighboring structures, the two garages on either side, which are substantial in nature, it's not doing anything more drastic than what presently existing, most likely on a grandfathered basis.
Grace?
I agree with what everyone has been saying. I think this is a very unique circumstance with the elevation of the sidewalk adjacent to it actually helping mitigate the visual impact of the shed from neighboring properties.
Do we know that the area of the shed doesn't exceed the maximum, the portion of the code that talked about that we talked about
I think
last time?
Yeah.
we
I
calculated
think
that
it's this
last.
one, right?
We already calculated, do we have,
Yeah.
where is it? Oh, all right, so it's done.
It's,
He's calculating it as 15, and I think the code said something about 30, right?
Where is that? It's on this? Oh, that?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Is this the only
Is
one?
it the only one?
Is this the only copy? Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there you go. And what's the code maximum?
30%.
30%
30% of the rear,
of the rear setback.
rear setback, okay, all right, good, so we have that down.
Although that, I think that technically only applies if it's within 10 feet of the house, but,
Well, he's, if, you know, he has the calculations, so
Yeah.
we're covered, whichever way you read that.
variances are or are not substantial in some aspects.
I said they are substantial. I mean, 7 foot off the back, lot line. I mean, the variance that is actually sought out of the 10 feet setback requirement.
I would say it's numerically substantial, but it's, what's the word, in real life, it's not,
In effect,
in effect,
the effect is, less substantial.
I agree. Eric, was
I
that
agree,
anything
yes, yes.
and Grace?
I agree as well.
Okay,
Does the application need to be updated or no? Because, I mean, it's saying 3 feet away from back wall on
and
here,
it's,
and it's 7 feet.
No, it's
Back
3
property.
feet from the back property line.
Okay, so,
That's where it currently is,
yeah,
yes.
so does it need to be updated on here, or is it not necessarily on here?
we can make a note on it, but the resolution is what we'll
Okay.
have the force, so. Let's see, where are we? Proposed variance will or will not have adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions. I'll just jump in and say will not for some of the reasons we've said above. And also, because it's barely, it's not visible from the front, it's barely visible from the back, you can only see the roof. John?
It doesn't interfere or have any interplay with the stream that's nearby there, does it? From what I've been hearing about the
No.
stream? No, so, yeah, I don't see anything other than what you just said.
Grace?
I think there's minimal impact.
Eric?
I agree.
Donald?
the only thing that we've noted that if the village had to do substantial work on the retaining wall, which it backs up to, they might end up having to drag the shed. To give adequate space for staging.
Well, we know the village doesn't repair its walls, so. If you walk up Main Street.
The historic board wants old walls.
Expensive proposition. Okay, was or was not self-created.
Self-created.
Grace,
Self-created.
anybody disagree that it was self-created?
No.
I agree, but I'd say the town website created it.
Now,
Indirect, I'll take
do
co-responsibility
you,
for
do you
that.
walk
How
to the
about that?
train do you go to the city, do you walk to the train,
Yeah,
and do you walk right by Village Hall?
yes.
Okay, so you're in you had an idea that you were in a different municipality than the town.
Hey, I don't even, I'm from Canada originally, so I don't even know how Phillipstown covers Garrett. I'm just figuring out that Phillipstown covers Garrison and Cold Spring only, but not, does it also cover Nelsonville? Yeah.
Yeah.
Phillipstown.
See, hold on. I gotta learn this stuff, so.
And, and you get a water bill, right?
Yes,
And that goes to the
do.
village of Cold
Yes.
Spring.
Everybody needs a job.
yeah.
This is the,
I guess the confusing
those
thing is,
officials.
I think that the confusing thing is, and this was the problem with the building inspector until obviously that got absorbed in with Phillipstown. I think that's why there's some confusing for us, because the building inspector used to be separate for Cold Spring, and then it now for Phillipstown it's the same building inspector. And so when we looked at the building code, because we knew that a change had happened, I think we just looked at the Phillipstown building code assuming that was under the same jurisdiction because it had the same building inspector. That's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Okay.
But it won't happen again.
Okay, are we ready for a balancing statement?
Why don't you summarize what we have and we can
Sure.
use that as a balancing
Um,
statement,
so-
and then we're gonna add or subtract.
I don't think we need to put any conditions on the shed. I think we've said that it fits in with the neighborhood and the existing sheds. It's not visible, it would be undesirable to have it in the middle of the yard and to cut down trees if necessary to put it there. And we don't have to make all of the judgment about whether it's historically appropriate. That would be the HDRB. We've said it's not substantial, it's not a substantial variance, so I think we can basically summarize what we've said above, and that balances it out. So is there any more discussion? Should we have a vote on this? So the first vote would be on resolution,
We already voted on the fence.
we did on the gate 02, so
Okay.
the gate will be 03. Do that as a separate.
I just think that for the shed, the distinguishing, we would be having a completely different discussion if there wasn't the elevation change created by the retaining wall.
Mhm.
And so that's the basis for our, I think,
Right.
for our
That's
for our
a very-
discussion. Because anybody would say, well, I don't wanna have
Or if
to
there
cut
was
down
an
trees in
actual
the middle of my
neighbor back
property,
there.
you know, what?
Or if there was an actual neighbor back there, but again, it doesn't matter whether it's public or private.
I think we should
that-
take
that's
out the piece about the trees being one of the factors as well, because the two apple trees that you're talking about are like little shrubby guys. They're not the ones that you're seeing with the truck.
Yeah,
don't know if
I was
that's
just,
really-
yeah, okay.
And to be honest, this is funny, but when we first did it, I actually thought there was a kind of a safety factor in the fact that it was in the back there, because when you walk by, I was like, drunk teenagers. The roof's right there, so they can't fall down and break their necks.
There is a gate, I mean, there's a fence.
Oh yeah, but you know how it is. They'll fall over those things. They'll just land right on the roof of the shed now.
And sleep there until the morning.
So I'm just gonna note in the balancing statement that the position of the yard so far below street level on Academy is very important to pretty much all of the discussion we've had on it. Okay, so we need a motion to grant or deny.
I move to grant the variance as described in your summary.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Alright,
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, congratulations. Thank you for coming to see us after the fact.
Thank you for granting it after the fact. You're a tough crowd, but I appreciate it.
So you don't, obviously you don't need a building permit for the shed, but you have to wait until you get through the HDRB, and you, I guess, need a building permit for the gate, right?
And the shed.
Well, you will need a building permit for the shed, because you'll need a CO
Oh, right.
Yes.
for the shed and for the gate, so yes.
Okay.
So you do have to wait, well, nothing's gonna change, but you
Oh, wait, back from
have to
Catherine.
get that and then schedule an inspection by the building inspector.
Okay. And does this board need anything else from me, or is that?
No, we're all done.
Okay.
I'm gonna send you copies of this when I get it to Jeff, and I'll send that on to the Historic Review Board so they can see our thinking also.
Okay. If you do, just let me know.
And Tom, when you get a chance, just please return the sign.
Yes, I was gonna bring it tonight, but I
Yes.
forgot, so I'll bring it. I'm anxious to get that thing
I
on.
just labeled this agreement on it, and I gave it, and
Typography.
now it shows the gate.
Okay.
Put it in a frame.
Laminated.
Thank you again.
Good night.
Night.
All right, let's,
More beer.
let me gather this stuff
More
and then we'll get to parsonage. Why can't we just do this all a bunch of
But then it's like,
Yeah.
Do you wanna collect all this?
I do,
Okay.
unless you want, I mean, these are.
No, no, no,
uh,
no.
Bruce, if you're interested, you're welcome to keep a copy, but you don't have to.
Oh, I'm okay, thanks.
Yeah, I guess it's a public-private company, it's being launched right now. Unmanned, yeah, it's gonna be the land, and I think the land will
Do you do plantings like that, or you just do basic?
It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff I'm interested in is like the seated mixes.
Okay, so up next we have a workshop for 21 Parsonage. Are you Luke or are you
Yeah.
Sam?
I am Luke.
Okay,
Yes.
It's a great spot for it.
and are you one of the owners?
I am, I'm Sam's wife.
You're Sam's wife. And what's your name?
Marcella.
Marcella. So at our workshops, our goal is to make sure that the application is in order.
Yes.
We don't go through all of that subjective stuff that we just did with the other two. Thanks for your patience.
No, absolutely.
Um,
Thank you for taking us tonight.
So why don't you, you and I have had some communication by email, and I've talked with Matt at the planning board about some things that we might want to do. So why don't you tell us about the project and we'll
Sure.
pass this on.
So if you're familiar with Parsons Street at all, there is an existing barn on a lot. Right on the corner, there's a stone house on the corner of Pine and Parsonage coming from the west, and then the next parcel in is 21 Parsons Street, which is the parcel we're speaking about tonight. Currently, as you can see on the site plan there is an existing barn. It's a two-story barn. It's about 363 square feet is the footprint, and then there's a makeshift ladder up to the second floor there. The goal here would be to ultimately convert that barn in as much as it can remain into a single-family residence. So the ultimate goal will be a renovation of the barn. It'll resemble new construction, but to keep it as consistent with the existing structure as possible. And the new footprint will only be about 380 square feet. So it'll be a relatively small house. And
Could I ask you, so what you're saying is proposed two-story frame residence to replace existing two-story frame barn, so the frame barn is going to be demolished?
the frame barn, it will ultimately have to
Ultimately
come
be
down.
demolished.
Structurally, it's
You are
unsound.
going to put the new residence in the footprint of what the barn was?
That would be the goal, yes.
Is this a separate lot, right?
It is. It's a separate.
So it's been separate for a while.
It's been separate for, Aaron had asked that I try to determine when it was subdivided. I haven't been able to come to a final determination on that.
1984.
It was subdivided in '84? Okay. It was single, it was, owned by the same family at that point.
This is it right there, I think. It's either that or it's back there.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
So, my understanding is that the barn does not have a foundation, it doesn't have water or sewer,
Does not have water or sewer. That's correct.
and no
And it
foundation.
would need no foundation
So
to
there's not-
speak of.
There's nothing reusable except maybe for some of the siding, are you planning to? I mean, is
There-
that what you're,
Yes, that's correct.
okay.
I would say one thing we need is we need what's going on around this lot in a Google map or something. I mean, I don't know how to evaluate this if we don't see. the
Yeah,
neighborhood.
if you could get like an overview, an aerial,
Yes,
Like-
we can certainly do that.
8x11 with neighboring properties.
I'm sure I can get an overview of the tax map.
Do you have a
showing-
survey?
Yes. I have a survey, there should be surveys in the packet as well as architectural plans showing heights and the size of the structure.
Is it in this packet?
It would be in the one with the application. Those are the plans, and then the survey should be in there. Here's a copy of the
Sure, if you wouldn't mind.
Do you have an extra? Yeah, we'll just pass.
Well, that's the
it.
one,
We'll pass
that's
it.
fine. There's a survey,
There it
there's a
is.
survey.
Okay, so why don't we hand, if we have a few copies, or just one?
There should be 8 copies of that.
Tell you what, we'll hang on to this one, you guys hang on to that one, we'll pass this around.
There should be 8 copies of the survey as well.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead.
so I've been talking with Matt Francisco at the planning board also, and it was suggested that we refer this to Matt for an opinion, and they may actually need to do a change of use.
We anticipate that we will have to do a change of use.
Because it's never been a residence before.
That's correct.
So I'm curious, since we're essentially rebuilding this, why do you want to keep it at that corner of the lot?
So the intent in keeping it there is, really aesthetically, the house that is to the south, which would be on the corner of Pine and Parsonage on the survey there, it's showing now or formerly of, I think, Batanza, is very close to the property line. I think it's about 3.3 feet, about 3.3 feet off of that property line. And it's only about 5 feet, I think, from the road as well. So in keeping this house more toward the north side of the property where it exists,
The orientation is weird.
and I think you would see also from the overhead map, if we have the tax map, where the northern property is situated, there is more space in between those two, so it would.
There's a driveway right there.
There's the driveway and then the house. So visually, moving it closer to Pine Street would actually make it appear closer to the house.
And what about moving it back from the sidewalk so it's more in line with the other houses on the block?
It could be moved back from the sidewalk. It's, again, that's just where it has been and where it existed, so we went with that as the location, but knowing that we were coming in front of the board to discuss alternatives, it's, as you can see, the lot is much smaller than, it's consistent with other lots there, but it's smaller than what there is in other parts of the community, so we would want to maximize the backyard space by doing that as well. Since it's going to be such a small indoor living space.
So it would be the narrow lot variance issue?
It does, Matt and I were talking about that, and that does not apply because this was subdivided after the code came into play, so there's no grandfathering of small lots for this. So a couple of other things that I think we're gonna wanna see, or planning will for sure, is, some kind of what was filed with the subdivision, so that we can make sure there aren't any restrictions on what can be done with the property.
Okay.
I mean, somebody may have said, okay, family member, you can have it, but you may never build a house there.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering, this was done in the 80s, so the code existed, and what were the basis for
Subdividing.
subdividing?
That's
I'd
what
be
we
really
need to
interested
find
to know
out, I
what the
think.
heck that was.
It may have been an inheritance or something, and they just split it that way.
what I
We-
That wouldn't make sense from a planning board reason of allowing it.
You're gonna give us what's going on the voltage lot? You're gonna show what's going on over here?
Yes, I can show, we don't have a survey that shows that, I can attempt to,
Well, you
you can
could
see
give
what's
us-
on file, but I can certainly give you the overhead,
The aerial.
the aerial
Okay.
of the area.
So I think we'll wanna see that, or planning, the subdivision papers, or planning will.
Mhm.
We talked about the narrow lot rule not applying, so you would need some setback variances.
Yes,
There's also a parking requirement,
yes.
for 2 spaces off-street. I personally don't agree with that, but that's
Well,
what the code says, so.
that's also part of the reason for siting the house on one side.
So are you
would be
planning
to-
for a driveway there? I didn't
To
see
do
that
a
on-
curb cut into, yes, ultimately to do a curb cut to the south of the house, between the Batanza property and
So
where
you,
the structure would be.
you'll wanna show where that is. I
Okay.
think
You in the historic district here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, would you be planning to park a car there?
That would be the plan ultimately, yeah.
Are you planning to live there or to rent it?
It's, we're planning to rent it, or it's gonna be where my parents
To be what?
live. My
Rent it,
parents live in
rent it.
Florida, and they're planning to have a residence here, and potentially a place that they will stay long-term rental.
If you could, in addition to the aerial view depiction, if you can get photographs of the street
Yes.
line, you know, looking up and down the street, to show us how the other houses sit
Okay.
on the property,
So,
on the entire block area. Go ahead.
just back to the parking for a second, please indicate that on the
Yes.
plan.
And that would all be variable as to where, where you might be placing the house.
Right. A lot of the other houses on the street are closer than the setback, but not many are
Would it
this
be
close.
would it be a deep driveway that you're contemplating, or just?
It would be fairly deep too, so more deep than wide. I don't anticipate 2 cars wide. I think it would be more.
I'm not sure you would have room for 2 cars wide. Is this
Right.
a porch or are those just measurements?
Those
Oh,
are just
deck.
measurements off there. That would be the entry on the. I'm sorry, are you talking about on the?
Sorry,
The
you
south
can't
side?
see what I'm pointing at.
No.
I'm pointing out what looks
I'm
like,
answering questions whether.
pointing out what looks like a deck
Showed who's going to get it.
Oh, yeah.
That is a.
right here.
That's kind of the deck and entry off the side of the house. Yeah.
So the deck comes all the way out to
That's
here?
yes. That's the proposal. To
So
kind
that-
of use that to enter into the.
So
You know, just a walkway.
Is that gonna be covered, the deck? Is that?
No.
Are any of this proposed?
Do you want one of these?
I'm just gonna come look.
Okay, yeah, you can come on up.
Yeah.
Come on up. So they're talking about this area here.
Yeah, it's, it would just be gravel landscaping. It wouldn't be an actual deck.
Okay, so more of a patio.
Yeah, right now, the only structure there is the barn, and then it would just be some gravel around the sides or stone.
We'll just add in, well, I mean, should we just add in, you know, what this is indicated to be?
Sure.
Yeah, that's a little bit unclear. Are you doing anything with the fence
In the back,
or anywhere on?
there's only a fence, as of right now, there's a fence in the back and then along the north side of the property. And we don't have any plans to do anything. We want to do, native plants around the border of the property to give it a little bit more privacy.
Okay.
Marcella's somewhat of a botanist.
A little bit.
She has a planting parcel, and that's her.
So I think what we need to do as a board tonight is help you understand what other variances that you need. I
Yeah.
don't remember that parking was on was parking on the application?
Parking was not part of the
Okay,
application.
so the code says you have to have 2 spots.
Mhm.
You know, if you only want 1 spot, then ask for a
Then
variance of
okay.
1. If you don't want any spots, then ask for a variance of 2.
So then, we're gonna base our discussion of potential variances by where this house structure is, or do we simply tell them that, you know, you need a 25-yard front setback?
Um,
And would it be 10 yard, or 10 feet setbacks on the side, because it's not grandfathered?
Yeah, I think what I'm thinking is that planning is gonna have a lot of input on the placement of the house for the change of use,
Okay.
and we ought to see what they say.
But for the applicant to have an understanding, I mean, you probably already understand then what the
Right.
basic setbacks you do need at this point?
My understanding is that we would need them off at the 10-foot
Side yard.
side yards, or one 10-foot side yard and a front yard, off the
Yeah.
25 front yard. And
And-
obviously, they're substantial.
And if you're setting back the structure 25 feet, I guess would it be 20 feet in the back, or is it 10? Back
This
there?
one is, rear is 20,
20.
so it gets to,
It's gonna get tight as to where the house is gonna be, between the 20, because you're talking
There's only
40
70.
feet already, 45 feet
right,
from front to back, and you only have 70 feet to work with.
When-
overall.
When you redo this, you should put the setbacks on as dashed lines, so we can
Okay.
see where the property is in relationship to those.
okay. He indicated in that section.
So this process is now, you're in front of the planning board right now?
We're not in front of the planning board yet, we came here first, my thought on that process was kind of twofold. One, it's, let's get started here to see if this is going to be feasible, to what extent you would like us to work with that. And then my belief was that, given our conversations with Greg and his opinions, that going to the planning board should be, this would be the more complicated process, I guess. So before we, spend all that time and money at the planning board, I thought come
But
with you,
the
but.
planning board would make the decision on whether or not there could be a change of use.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna recommend that we refer the project to planning for an
Understood.
informal recommendation, and while you're there, they may decide that, okay, we need to have a public hearing on this.
Right.
And then you will be in planning until that gets concluded, and then you'll come back to
Yeah,
us.
and what you've gained here is that you just have a basic understanding of what are the various
Well,
setbacks.
that was kind of, in the emails we knew that, we had that understanding that that's where we were going, and just wanted to get here to put this in front of you and to be able to.
But they might go
Get
through,
everything
I
that
mean,
you want.
throwing forward, they might go through 3, 4, 5 months of hearings. I mean, I could see it, in planning board, and
And then we would deny the variances?
then,
Right.
and then there's a chance you could come back here, and we would be in this horrible position of having to say no, maybe.
I
So
certainly,
I'm
I
just
certainly
thinking
understand that.
forward to what might very
So
well
what,
happen.
in your mind, you have to think, I mean, we look at each application, independent of all of this. And,
Right.
but with the thought of looking back as precedent, everything we've done in the past, cross-compared on similar fact bases.
Understood.
So, go ahead.
So this is kind of why I was suggesting an informal planning review,
Mm.
is that they might say, well, informally, we are okay with changing this use to a residential use,
Right.
but we definitely don't want it where it is. So, and they would help you figure out where to move it,
Mhm.
and then you could come back to us for the variances after
for the
they give
single
you some
variances.
guidance.
Okay.
They
Yeah,
could
and
come
I
back
think,
to us for the request for the variances.
Right,
And
you
if,
could
And,
update your application and
and-
then make an application.
Right.
and it would be an informal planning board process in the sense that, well, what does that mean, informal? Does that mean they have public hearings, or does that mean it's just workshopping?
It's like a workshop.
It's a conversation between the applicant and the planning board, not the public,
Right,
which is, can be tricky, because eventually you do have to meet the public.
yep.
And I don't know what the neighborhood, I don't know.
well, the neighborhood's consistently single-family homes, this is a,
No,
I
I'm
don't wanna
talking
say an
about-
eyesore,
Yeah,
I'm
the
talking
neighbor-
about the
the na-
actual neighbors.
The neighbors
the
may not
neighbor
like
Would be
this at all.
notified and would be,
That
Understood.
remains to be seen.
but are some of
Or
the,
they might like it a lot.
are some of the neighboring properties of the same size, you're saying?
yes.
So, you
Alright,
can,
well,
So, right,
that
there's,
out.
there's no way of eliminating the risk of doing some work before the boards and then having it not happen.
Understood, and, again, my belief and my understanding is that I think the variances here are quite substantial. And, although it's a very unique situation in a sense that there's an existing structure that's been there for all these years, that was just the reason to come here. But I do I think a workshop with the planning board will help us
yeah.
at least get the answer and, come back to you and say this is kind of where we're going with
Yeah.
that. And we understand that we could still go through the process here and ultimately after the public hearing there and not be successful, but that's,
And they may look at, you know, for information similar to what we asked for, simply like aerial oversights and, you know, photographs of up and down the street as to where the houses sit on the street and
Right.
so on and so forth. Just to show that you've been looking at it and trying to come up with
It's, I think you could also go to HCRB formally too, and just have a little discussion with them too.
Did you-
Yeah,
did
we-
you do
we
that one?
went-
they did that,
yeah.
yes.
Oh, you already did
They-
that?
And
yeah.
they told us to come to the other two.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to go
No,
first.
nobody wants to start, but, I
Well,
think.
the
They
way
did
you
give
do
us great
start-
feedback.
But no, it's good.
You know, first, the
do what you're
grand
doing,
variances
hitting the
would
bases.
mean nothing if they didn't give you a change of use.
Mm.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, the lot size itself is not crazy for the village, but the
Right.
position of the building where it is now is kind of unusual, although I think you could make an argument that there's some historic value to having it there, but I'm not sure, that's not our.
I think that's ultimately the, you know, kind of the belief is to keep it as much, as consistent as possible with.
And by the way, if you get a change of use to like an R1 use, it's more beneficial to you as a property owner to have that.
Right.
It becomes more valuable.
Right.
Unless you have a bunch of boats to store there or something.
No, I don't think.
So, do we have any other things we need to, I guess we should look at your list of neighbors.
Yes, so I can,
I mean, we don't have to do that now, but
well, if you wanna do, I'm happy to do that
Helps you.
informally with you, if you wanna do that. on a
Basically, you
later time.
want anybody who can see it,
Yes,
anybody who's bordering it, including across the street.
so I
And
did,
Anybody you wanna give notice to, so they don't come in and yell.
I included all of the, you know, everybody that can see it from across the street, so it's like 3 houses across the street, 1 here, 2 on Pine, but, I mean, do you want backyards on Parrot?
Yeah.
Okay.
If they can see it or border against your property, then definitely.
Okay, I included the immediate backyard on Parrot, but a lot of the others.
That's for your protection.
No,
also.
understood.
Any other changes in the application we wanna see?
No, it sounds like if they come before us again, it'll be for another workshop, primarily to tell us what has been happening with the planning board and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
I
I
can't imagine we'd go right into it.
I think-
Also, the original documents for the subdivision.
Yeah,
I marked that down.
somebody needs, we need to get those, or planning does.
Yes. I put those on the list. So the subdivision map, locate the driveway, the surveys, and the overhead, street surveys, as well as the overhead tax map. Figure out the parking spaces, and obviously add the setbacks to the site plan, so.
Yeah, you might as well have a lot of different options, like how you're gonna juggle everything on this property.
So, I don't know if we need a motion, but I'll make a motion that we send this project to planning for an informal review on the change of use, see what they say about that, and the placement of the building and any other concerns or input they might have.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, I think you would definitely come back here for another workshop, so we can schedule the public hearing, when we get to that.
Okay.
Thanks for waiting.
Thank you.
No, we appreciate you including us on the agenda. So.
Yeah,
Good night.
Thank you.
I'd like to, my kid is home alone, and I'd like to skip, or he's,
The minutes?
friends
The
is going to
minutes?
bed,
Yeah.
I'd like to
Got
skip the minutes.
All right,
Minute?
do you wanna collect all this stuff back so we have,
Yeah.
here's the application. Sorry.
Adjourn, we have a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Joint, joint.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Good night, everybody.